Hi there, I'm Leanne, the Barefoot Medium, and welcome to Enlightened Conversations, and with my guest, Lucero. We are going to have a beautiful conversation with you all today about embracing your sexuality. And amongst our conversation with you, we're going to speak a little bit of English, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Spanglish for me, while I still learn the language. And Lucero is from Colombia, where I'm talking to you from, and is my beautiful guest for today, who is going to share her wisdom and knowledge with you all. And we're going to give you some beautiful insights about how you can embrace your sexuality, which in Spanish is
abrazando mi sexualidad.
Perfecto. So, welcome or bienvenida. Mi nombre es Leanne. Yo soy medium internacional. Y Lucero, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Okay. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really flattered, and I'm so happy to have the chance to share
whatever we talk about.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, I'm from Colombia, and currently I teach yoga. I also offer sound healing with Tibetan singing bowls, and I work with the Bach flowers, with the Bach flower remedies. And now I'm finishing my training as an existential life coach. Okay? So that's a very short and very brief
explanation of all that she does.
Yeah, exactly. So, should I do that in Spanish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Por favor.
Para los que están viendo esto que hablan español, enseño yoga, trabajo con sonido, con los cuencos tibetanos, en sesiones de relajación y también de armonización del cuerpo físico y del cuerpo emocional. Trabajo con las flores de Bach y actualmente estoy finalizando un entrenamiento como coach existencial.
Perfecto. So the reason I've asked Lucero to join me today is to share her experience with working with the Bach flowers and with yoga and coaching and learning about all of that, and to share her wisdom with you about what sexuality means to you, so that you can share that with our guests. So, explicar, por favor.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I didn't mention sexuality at all.
But that's okay. We'll get there.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I just came to it through my working in this coaching program, and I guess this has been a pursuit for me in my life. So now I want just to share this with others, so maybe they have profound insights into what sexuality means to them.
Yeah.
So yes, basically that's what it is.
And what does sexuality mean for you?
Sexuality. Or embracing
your sexuality. What does that mean?
Well, to me, it means just discovering what it's already within. Like the spark within.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because it's not creating that sexual spark, it's just to connect to it, or just to discover or unfold the layers, just uncover the layers that we have put throughout the years, so that we can live more authentically our sexuality and with more freedom.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think the word authenticity and freedom are so beautiful when we talk about sexuality, because as women, we often don't embrace it, or we're not often encouraged to embrace our sexuality. And I think it's really important that we talk about this topic and what that means to be authentic in your sexuality. How do we express that as women?
Exactly. That's an interesting question.
So what are your thoughts on how you express that.
Okay, well, I think and the reason I use authenticity and freedom is actually because of the logotherapy perspective,
Okay.
which encourages people to live an authentic life. And what it means is just, again, embracing who you are. And without judgment, it's just to acknowledge who you are and love that part of yourself. And own it, even if it sometimes is not as bright as you would like it to be.
Yeah.
It's just taking on with whatever you are. So that means authenticity. And on the other side, freedom means just that we are always free to choose our attitude in any condition, in any circumstances that we are, how do you say that we are facing in our lives.
Yeah.
So when you see that in life, but then you can bring that same, let's say, description into your sex life, into your own sexuality. So how am I able just to discover this beautiful being that I already am, and just to love it and live according to what resonates with me, to what is makes me feel joyful, happy, at peace.
And I think there's a couple of things that you've talked about in there that are really connect with and understand what you mean. And I think one of the words that I want to explore more with you is judgment. And how often as women we judge ourselves as not, if we're not feeling fantastic or not feeling sexy or comfortable within our physical body one particular day, then we often judge ourselves. Do you find that you slip into that sometimes, or same? También. So how do you suggest clients move through that, or how do you do that in your own life?
Okay. So I guess what comes into my mind right now is just that this is the story of our lives. Since we are kids, we learn to judge others, but also to judge ourselves. So I guess that comes from two different perspectives. One is what I have been taught, and what I have chosen to do. So, for example, I've learned from my parents certain rules that you need to live your life in certain ways. So if you don't do it, then you will be judged. So that's one. And the other one is what I've created as I go along with my personality. So then I end up judging myself because I'm not that version of myself that I really want to be. So I think it works in two ways, or many other ways. So we need, for me, it would be first just to realize what it is that we are judging about ourselves. And then to overcome that, or to work on that, or to embrace it, and then we are more free to live an authentic life.
And I think that's really, saying about you learn them from your parents and from yourself, from your own life experiences. And I think what resonates for me is I often talk to people about values. What do you value most in your life? And, we all go through different stages of life. When we're younger kids, that connecting with friends and, making friendships and playfulness and joy is more valuable than taking responsibility in our everyday lives, because we just don't need to do that. But when we move through different stages, and particularly going into adolescence and embracing our sexuality or our sensuality, where do our values come in around that? What are we taught from our parents? Is it okay to talk about sex and talk about sensuality or being sensual? And what does that mean? And then how do we change those values as we learn and grow? Because maybe we've come from a a family or teachers or religious people in our lives that have said that it's not good to talk about, kind of kept hidden. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So maybe, or what I'm interested in and often question is, how do we go about changing those values in our everyday life when, what we've been taught doesn't really resonate with us anymore? Because we know we're essential sexual beings, and that's what we're here for. The universe, God, spirit, whatever it is that you believe in, the reality is we all came here through sex. Yeah, through sexuality, because it's that co-creative energy. And everything in the universe, everything in our physical world is created through sexual energy. And so what's so bad with it? That judgment of good or bad, So I think there's a lot of misunderstandings and, out of alignment with who we are right now compared to what we've been taught. And that brings up judgment.
Exactly. Well, it took me a while to realize that. I'm 36 years old now, but I wasn't quite aware when I started my sexual life. And it took me some years, and I guess the most important part is to be able to embrace it and to discover yourself. So I started asking myself these questions, right?
Yeah.
But after a while, I had started having sexual relationships, right? And then I discovered that through my parents, I have learned like two different set of values. Yeah. On one hand, my father would encourage me to say, you can have as many boyfriends as you want. That's okay. On the other side, he would tell me, since I was 12, okay, he would tell me, if you get pregnant, you will lose your father.
Oh, wow.
So then I grew up, and then I realized this later on. So I grew up saying, okay, I'm free to have sex.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I found myself feeling guilty for having sex, because every time I had sex with my boyfriend, which I was with this guy for a very long time, I always thought I was pregnant. So I was very scared. So then I think that had a lot to do with me being able to enjoy my sexuality. I mean, not enjoying it.
Yeah.
Because obviously I had this fear that I don't want to lose my father because I'm pregnant. And why am I pregnant? Because I had sex.
Yeah.
But on the other side, he was very open. He was like, and he used to sit with some of my girlfriends and talk about sex. But he didn't realize he was creating that confusion in me.
Yeah.
And then from my mom's perspective, without her even realizing as well, I grew up, and obviously only when you are having a relationship, you find out that you're carrying these beliefs that are not yours.
Yeah.
So I realized that I have the belief that it is the guy who is entitled to initiate.
Yeah.
But not me.
Okay. So and you sat back and waited.
Exactly.
Waiting patiently for the man to take the lead.
So I don't know, and maybe this is a cultural thing in Colombia. I don't know if it happens in Australia.
Yeah. But similar.
Exactly. So that's how I can track back my sexual history according to what I've learned and from my parents and from my cultural environment.
Okay.
Does it
interesting? Yeah. We're just having a conversation and hoping that what we talk about resonates for you guys, because, by us sharing our learnings, our insights, our wisdom, we're helping you to learn and grow into more of your sexuality. And part of, one of the things you mentioned was joy. And I want to pick up on another word in there. And what is joy and what is pleasure in sexuality? And how, as women or even men, how do we embrace pleasure in our lives, or joy in our lives, when it comes to our sexuality or our sensuality. Yeah? What are your thoughts on that?
I think for me, at this point, it can change anytime.
Yeah.
At this point, to me, joy means that I can be myself.
Okay.
That I can fully be who I am and not having to hide any part of me. Then I feel joyful about sharing
what we're sharing.
Exactly, with others.
Yeah.
And one was joy and the other one was pleasure. Wow.
Who doesn't like a bit of pleasure in their life? Yeah.
Exactly. That's part of being a human.
Exactly.
A human experience.
That whole physical touch is, for some people, brings pleasure and joy because that's the way they communicate. Whereas others, it's about the words and, others it might be about giving gifts or doing things for them. And, those 5 love languages by Gary Chapman are really popping into my awareness as we talk about that. We can either say, need to express love through our words or through physical touch or through buying gifts or doing things for people, acts of service. So how does that all come in with pleasure? It gives me pleasure to do things for people and be of service. And I'm also very physical touch, the way I take in the world and the way I like to receive love and pleasure. And so how do we allow ourselves to do that as women if we've been taught to sit back and wait for the man to take the lead?
Totally. And then what's coming to my mind as well is, and I guess we talked about this before, is pleasure and satisfaction, like the difference. And I think for me, satisfaction would be just to take care of my physical needs.
Yep.
And pleasure, then I will go a little deeper.
Okay.
And for me, it will mean to connect with the other person.
Okay.
And if we're talking about sexuality, it will mean for me touching. It would mean for me presence with the other, intimacy. That for me would bring me pleasure, and not only like an orgasm, which is obviously perfect.
Absolutely.
Please let's do that.
Yeah.
But just if I remain on the level of orgasm, it would be just satisfaction
on the physical
level. But if I'm able to connect to the other person and to really be in the presence of the other and recognize the other as unique, and so the other is doing that with me, then I will feel pleasure. And then another thing that is coming to my mind now in my heart is that I always knew that sexuality was more than sexual intercourse. Yeah. But I just couldn't find the partner or the teacher or someone to talk about it. So I really had to explore it on my own. Yeah. And it was just until later in my life that I was able to start connecting or embracing that part, which is higher than just the physical need.
And I think you make a good point there that, often, particularly in our adolescent years or teenage years when we're younger, it's often about the physical needs getting met and, that reaching orgasm or ejaculation or whatever it is that, how you need to experience pleasure and joy in your sex life. I think what that creates is a bit of a goal-oriented focus rather than a heart-centered and soul-based focus. And I love how you say that because, my experience has also been similar with, a lot of the physical, but not so necessarily the soul connection is how I would describe it. Or for you guys, it's really that emotional and mental connection as well. And, Lucero and I have talked about one of the things I do is work with twin flames and soulmates and help people connect with their twin flame or soulmate. And one of the things that comes in with that is divine lovers. And that's on that beautiful spiritual level where you can both see each other as souls and find the pleasure and the joy within the present moment, even if it's just, you know, a touch, a physical touch, not necessarily taking that step into the bedroom or, you know, sex and the physical act. You can have intimacy without that necessarily. And that's part of your sexuality, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah. So can you share with people what your thoughts are around, you know, that emotional or soul-based connection? Because I think that's really something that we don't get taught, you know?
Yeah, and I think it might sound like a paradox a little bit, what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
From this logotherapy perspective, there are 3 levels to love. I mean, in a relationship. The first one is the physical level, the physical needs being met. Then the second level is the psychological, our emotional needs. And then it's the spiritual level.
Perfect.
So we want to get to the spiritual level, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about soulmates and that kind of connection. And obviously I aspire to that as well.
Yes, Lucero's already told me we need to have a conversation.
Yeah, we need to talk
that.
about that. That will be the next talk.
Absolutely.
But we cannot neglect the fact that we are human beings and that we touch each other and that we have physical needs. So my approach here is not to neglect. Okay.
Perfect.
The last one, which is the spiritual level, but first to work on the other ones. So we are aware of ourselves, and then we can go out of ourselves and encounter the other. And meet the other, which is an authentic one, a unique person, and that's when the soul connection happens, right? When I am able to see the other one as authentic and unique. So the first one is the physical level, and what is prevailing here is the will for pleasure. So to satisfy my needs, you know, orgasm or physical touch, whatever it is for each person. And then it comes then the second level, which is the psychological. The prevailing here is the will for power. We want to protect our ego, like our identity. So we expect the other to fill in our blanks or whatever it is we lack. So we get into these romantic relationships, but from that sense of lacking. Because what we want is power. I want to control over you. I want to control over you. And the last level is the
before you go to the next one, I want to just touch on that if that's okay, because you know, I think it's really key with what you do with the Bach flower essence and some of my work as well, is, you know, that push-pull in relationships where, you know, someone might go into fear or have doubts, whether it's about themselves, and usually it is, whether they're good enough, whether they're worthy, whether they're, you know, attractive enough, or whether they have enough physically to provide, or whatever it might be. I think we go into those fears or those doubts sometimes that create a bit of a push-pull in the power relationship in a, you know, between a couple or partners, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, lovers, friendships, you know, all of it. There's often a push-pull there. And when we go into our fear, and we all have them, you know, it's no point, and that's part of being authentic, is going, hey, I have fears, I have doubts, I have, you know, some issues sometimes around worthiness, and it's about learning how to step out of that or step through that and embrace all of who we are and know that we're okay. And so I think it's really important that we know when we're doing that, we might withdraw a bit in the relationship dynamic. And it doesn't mean we don't love the person anymore, or we love them more or less or whatever. It just means we need that space for ourselves to come back into balance and to really move through our own fears or doubts, you know. And so I think that's beautiful, and that's that psychological level you were talking about. So, yeah, how do you work with people at that level? If, you know, particularly we're talking about sexuality and sensuality, if people have, whether it's through past relationship experiences, if they have fears or doubts there, can you share, you know, how do you work with people to help them move through those fears and doubts?
Yeah,
at that psychological level.
Yeah, and even the other level as well.
Yeah.
I guess the key aspect for me, I would say, is within first.
Yeah.
Which is the name of my project, Primero Adentro, in Spanish.
Right.
And what I've realized is that, you know, you cannot create a relationship with others if you don't have a relationship with yourself, or if you don't really know what's going on with yourself, what's bothering you, what things you like, what things you dislike. So to step back a little bit, you know, in order to move to the last level, it would be to become aware of ourselves. Yeah. And by that I mean our beliefs, and then our beliefs are creating our emotions, because that's how we react to the world outside. Yeah. There's something I think should be done in a certain way, and when a person doesn't do it, then it resonates with me in an uncomfortable way. So then it comes, the emotion comes. So if I am able to step back and just higher from myself and look at myself and see, wow, this is what's really happening. Like, I'm having fear that this person is going to abandon me, or I am expecting this person to be for me all the time. If I am able to see it, then 90% of the issue is really solved. Yeah. Then it's a matter of being able to imagine a new version of myself, where I no longer need the other person to do X, Y things for me.
Whatever. Yeah.
So I would say that would be how I work with people. And you were asking about the Bach flowers, which I know in Australia, bush flowers are really famous.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's God's pharmacy, right? Nature's pharmacy.
Yeah, nature's pharmacy.
It doesn't matter the name. So what I do is, like, we sit, we have a conversation, and then from whatever situation you're going through, then we will translate this into the emotional language. Yeah. And with that, I am able to start working on deeper issues other than the other one is doing this. The other one doesn't fulfill my needs. No.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with me?
Exactly.
So then we start working on ourselves. And then I think that gives us a sense of empowerment, because the other person no longer has the power over me. I have that. I mean, it's not the power or controlling, but it's just I am able to take it, own it, and work on that. And just clear it and go back to harmony, which is...
And I think the word power... you know, we often, and I've moved through that, we have power, each and every one of us, in a positive way. It's just sometimes we've been taught to see it as a negative, in that, you know, really ego-based or fear-based way. But if we're able, particularly as divine feminine, if we're able to stand in our power, it just means being able to be authentic and, like you said, acknowledge what you're experiencing. And, you know, I want to throw into the mix there, communicate that to your partner, whoever it is that you're with. And I want to share a bit of a story with you. For those of you who don't know, about 11 months ago, I moved from Australia to Colombia, and I'm living in Santa Marta in Colombia, which I just love, and have been learning poco a poco every day a little bit more Spanish. In amongst that comes a different cultural experience and different ways of expressing and communicating. Now, at home, one of the things I was very good at picking up on with clients or, you know, even with myself was emotion and going, okay, that's what that is. I feel sad, or I feel anxious, or I feel, you know, happy or joyful or whatever it might be. But one of the things that I've learned culturally is that some words have a different meaning culturally. And so with a friend, I remember using the word frustrada. Yo soy un poco frustrada, meaning I'm a little bit frustrated. Apparently that means something very different in Spanish.
Really?
Than, a little bit annoyed. But what was shared with me was that frustrada was more about thinking that the goals or the things I was aiming for were not possible to achieve. So it's really interesting to go, well, okay, a word that I would have used in English has a different meaning here. So I've had to learn to switch my mindset and use a different word for that so that I don't mix the meaning. Does that make sense?
Totally. And what's coming for me is not only translating from English to Spanish, but from women to men.
My God. That's
so there's
different
another
creatures.
translation we need to do as well.
And, you know, us women like to talk. No matter which culture we're in, I think that's universal. Yeah. Whereas men, I think, sit back a little bit more and are more that action-oriented, and that comes down to our sexuality as well. Women are, you know, in terms of our anatomy, we're open, we're receivers, whereas men are the givers, particularly when it comes to sexuality. And so that comes down to communication as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Exactly. So how can you go up to the last level or the expected level of spiritual connection when you are not able to tackle the physical level in terms of communication, and after that, the emotional level or the psychological level of the relationship. So what I've come to understand as well, talking about this embracing like sexuality, is really like communication is just essential to embracing sexuality. And really, like, I was not able to communicate my needs because first of all, I didn't even know what I liked or what I wanted. And second of all, I felt I was going to be rejected if I did so. So it took me a while to get there. And it was just like a two-way communication process. And it came with one guy. He asked me once, like, Lucy, how do you like to be loved? And I couldn't answer.
Great question.
I couldn't answer that.
Wow. I think there was a man who was in connection with his soul and with his sexuality. And,
totally. But I was blocked at that point of my life. I couldn't answer, and he had a very clear sense of what it was for him.
Okay.
It took me some years to realize, but then, okay, what do I like? How do I like to be loved? And by love, what do I mean by that?
Sexual life.
Sexual life, relationship. And then I realized the first part is to be aware of what I want or what I like, or to uncover the layers and embrace who I am. And after I've done that process, then comes a very challenging part, which is communicating to the other. Because what if this guy doesn't talk at all? How do you do it? It takes a lot of courage, vulnerability.
Yeah. And I love the word vulnerability. And I think so many women are fearful of that word. But the reality is every time you step into a sexual experience, particularly as a woman, you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. You're opening physically, mentally, emotionally, and hopefully spiritually to another being. And you're stepping into a space of co-creating or creating energetically, whether, you know, you're talking about pregnancy earlier, you know, the purpose of sex is to co-create or procreate. So, you know, you step into a vulnerable space, particularly as women, you know, and men, because, you know, there's pressure on men at times as well to perform physically or, you know, even have that mental and emotional connection there. So I love the word vulnerability.
And you were saying that we as women tend to communicate a lot, but it might be with our friends, at workplace, but when it comes to that space of intimacy, do we really do it?
Particularly with men.
With men.
Oh, and we are talking male and female relationships, but it obviously applies to all, you know, female, male.
Exactly.
You know, we all have characteristics of masculine, feminine within each of us. So I love that.
Yeah. So what do we do when we are not feeling comfortable, but we really like the other person and we want this situation to change? What do we do? Do we settle for that? Or do I take the courage to face it and just to speak about it? And if I do, how do I do it? From which place do I do it? Like, I expect you to do this for me, or look, this is who I am, this is what I enjoy. And I guess, like, what I've realized, especially on sexuality, is not always about talking.
No.
But you can also show in a gentle way with your body language. But that also takes courage, just to move the hand a little bit, just to say, look at my eyes. You know, it's very gentle, but in that space, you can feel you're naked. But it's not only your body naked, it's your soul is exposed as well.
Exactly.
So, yes, women talk a lot, but, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this. Like, how do you do with that? How do you deal with the communication? Do you really do it? What are your beliefs around that? That women should just take care of the men's needs, or how do you take care of your own needs?
And I think that great question, and I'd love for people to share with us their thoughts on it as well. You know, it's funny, women talk a lot verbally. I think we also talk with our physical bodies. And I think men talk more with their non-verbals and their bodies than with their words. So you can often tell if a man is stepping in towards you and attracted sexually, sensuality-wise, or wants to embrace you, or, you know, whatever, pleasure you, then you can tell by their body language if you're present to it. You know, and I think as women, we're often too busy talking and we're not listening to, you know, what else is being said within that conversation, not just verbally. So I love that. I love that.
And how do we do that in a gentle way? Because I don't mean, when I am saying embracing your sexuality, is to become tough and this is what works for me and, you know, move on if it doesn't work for you. Because I'm not trying to say that we're going to attack the other person, but we're also taking care of ourselves in a loving way. So how do we do it? And how do we leave the space to the other person to also communicate what the other person wants, or if you need to change something about yourself. And I was telling you earlier that you come to this encounter with a person, with another human that is a male, I mean, with a physiological, totally body different than yours. And then you're going to get together to that place, which is sex. So clearly you don't feel the same that the other person is feeling, and the other way around. So
you have to communicate.
You have to communicate. I don't have a penis, and my partner doesn't have a vagina. So how am I able to show in a gentle way what
you do like? What is pleasure? Like?
What is pleasure?
And that takes vulnerability, doesn't it?
A lot. A lot, especially if you want the other person to do something different. How do you do it? In a violent way? Or do you just remain quiet and ignore your needs? Or I wonder how you've handled that before, because I bet you've gone through that. I mean,
and the thing is, we would absolutely love to hear what your thoughts are on this topic, and we could talk about it for such a long time. And I love sitting with you and chatting about it and hearing your thoughts. For everyone that's watching, then please connect with us on the live that we'll have after this, because we'd love to talk to you more and get your thoughts on, sexuality and what embracing your sexuality feels like for you. So I want to just kind of wrap up a little bit and ask you, Lucero, if you can share how people can connect with you in both English and Spanish, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely. So yes, I have this project within first, Primero Adentro, which main goal is to help others to pursue their own meaning in life, or to discover in different realms, not just only sexuality, but emotional, professionally, and we do that through yoga, through sound, and through flowers. And soon we're gonna have a retreat where we're gonna share in more detail, and we're gonna tackle like deeper issues about ourselves. This won't be like a technique retreat, because the body knows what it needs to do. We don't need to show the body what it needs to do. It already knows, but we need to connect to ourselves and just uncover things and remove weight from our life that is not longer serving. So the way to connect is through
your website. You can connect with Lucero through her website, which is
www.primeroadentro.org. Well, we write it down just in case. And there you find my email address, my phone number as well, and also we are on Facebook, on Instagram. Also. That would be the fastest, shortest way of connecting.
Perfect.
And we can do, like Skype conversations or whatever it is that the person needs.
Right. And, I want to just wrap up with this talk. And as I said, we could go on forever about this topic. And I think women love talking about it. I know that, you and I have had many a conversation about it. I'd just like to wrap up and say, if you do want to connect with Lucero, jump on her website. And if you are interested in connecting with me as well, I also do things online through Skype or WhatsApp or over the internet, Zoom. Then jump on my website, thebarefootmedium.com.au, and we can go from there. And I am doing sessions here in Colombia with my translator. Lucero is helping me translate, and I do a bit in Spanish and a bit in English sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I have to say that the website is in Spanish, but you can write to me in English on the contact form, and I'll reply in English.
So we want to thank you all for joining us on this show, and please feel free to join me on the next one and get in contact with us soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.